Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Rob Browne here with you on this Wednesday, college football, basketball, baseball, roundtable blitz. We're going to get after it. 2 hours. We'll be with you talking college sports and Lovett batting in the leadoff position. Dudley, Dawson, hawgville.net, followed by Pat Dye Jr. checking in from Atlanta. And we'll be talking with him about, he had several of his clients being a sports agent, Kadarius Toney, Landon Dickerson, among others, in the Super Bowl this past Sunday. And by the way, Kadarius Toney, longest punt return in Super Bowl history. That was 65 yards. Mobile, Alabama native played his football at Florida. How do you let kids like that get out of state? Maybe they don't all want to go to Auburn or Alabama. Just, I would have offered that kid. But hour number 2, Doug Dean will check back in with us from Birmingham. And of course, the fourth segment, we'll go back out to Austin, Texas. Anwar, Richardson, orangebloods.com. What's going on with Texas? Arch Manning on campus riding around in a scooter. Not one of those ones that you see people riding around Walmart in, but in a scooter, like, why don't you walk? It's good for you. It's good exercise, son. Come on. I think they ought to outlaw any scooter that's electronic. If it makes pedal power, I'm okay with that. Hey, follow us on Twitter at sidelines_live. And we are here Monday through Saturday, 2 hours every day. And you can check us out, www.sidelines.live. Having a contest from some of the strangest places that people listen to us from and sync the show. So far to date, our furthest listener is Robert Dream Weaver, Peace River, Alberta, 42-hour drive from Wilson, Arkansas, right outside of Memphis. He being a duck guide up there in the fall for 60 days before he comes back down and kills more ducks in the South. But, hey, lots to talk about. Let's get started. Dudley, Dawson, big one tonight. Hawgville.net, ECS House Industries Razorback Report is going to tell us how Arkansas is going to take on and beat the 10-2 Texas A&M Aggies, which, Dudley, why they're the second best record in the SEC, and you see everybody ahead of them on the NCAA projections for the seed. It's a pretty good team, and Arkansas has won 5 of their last 6. What's going to happen?
Well, it's going to be a tough game for Arkansas. Texas A&M has played really well once they got into conference play. The reason their metrics aren't good is because of their out-of-conference schedule, which was not good at all, and they didn't get off to the best start. But Buzz has done a great job in getting his team into roles it can play. They do great defensively. I think that's always been one of his strong points when it comes to his teams. But yeah, it'll be a tough game between two teams that are playing pretty well now. Arkansas spit the bit here last week against Mississippi State. Mississippi State has now won 5 in a row, but that was a tough loss for Arkansas, just as it was a great win for them at Kentucky. I expected them to go 1-1 that week, but expected it to be the other way around.
Well, when you get a big win like that on the road against Kentucky, 88-73, or you beat them at home, doesn't matter. You got to be careful not to let that game, even though you won it, keep it from focusing on the next one. Mississippi State, Joe Klein was on with us yesterday talking about, SEC basketball, college basketball. He said he'd seen them 3 times and told everybody in the state of Arkansas, these guys can play. And I don't know if the SEC, how good the league is, but top to bottom, Georgia last year was 1-17. They've won 6 conference games now. Arkansas has won 5 of their last 6. Is it just a case of it's taken a little longer than it did the last couple of years for the teams to develop? If Arkansas wins tonight, they're on a trajectory to get a pretty high seed in the NCAA tournament. Do you agree?
Yeah, I think as in terms of Arkansas season this year, losing Trevon Brazile and obviously not having Nick Smith for a long time factored into things, but also they have not had enough outside shooting. And that I think as they look back on it, they probably would have recruited a little bit more shooting if they could have. Certainly got a lot of great athletes and great basketball players. Many of them who are going to be playing in the NBA in the next year or two. But when it gets down to it, when the half court offense hasn't worked, the outside shooting has been has been holding them back a little bit. Obviously, they're young, but in this day and age, everybody's young, or most people are, except the mid majors, I guess. Still got a chance to get to where they want to go, but it's one of those things. Consistency in any sport,
Yeah,
at any level, no matter the style of play you have to have an identity, and I think that has come along here. But and everybody, if they had beaten Mississippi State last week, was like, here they go to another Elite Eight. But that gave you some pause at home. Nick Smith coming back, I think, will help them in the long run. But it was probably different last week having him. He played 17 minutes. It's interesting. There are a lot of Arkansas fans who criticize him. I've known the kid since the 8th grade. Him and his dad and the people around him have always been great to me. I don't understand where all the hatred comes from. Obviously Arkansas hadn't had too many number one players in the country, or not, top 5 players in the country coming in and him not playing. But everybody needs to calm down. The kid's really good. We'll see what happens the rest of the year, but they're better with him down the stretch than they would be without him.
When you bring a player like Nick Smith who was rated 1 or 2 in the country, in-state guy from Arkansas, you bring him in this late in the season, what do you need to do to make sure it doesn't upset whatever chemistry that you're developing?
Well, the first thing I would say is I don't think that has been a problem. I think, from all indications and the people I talk to, his teammates love him over there.
Yeah.
For the most part, he's been on the bench, been supporting him. They love having him back. As I said, there's a segment of the fan base who wants to pinpoint the struggles and throw it right on him because he's been doing knee management and all these kind of things. I don't get that sometimes, but that's not the way I'm wired. I don't get up looking for something to bitch about, to be honest.
I'm with you.
So I think they'll be better off. But, he played 17 minutes the other day. As they continue to work themselves in, he gets in better game shape, gets more shots up. Kid that played 5-6 games there at the start of the year, averaged 12 points. It's not as if this is a bit player in a great Broadway play. This is a guy who can take the lead role. It'll just take a little bit, and he'll acquiesce and do things to take over during games as they go down the stretch.
Well, and that's the thing that I think people, you're saying people are upset about him doing knee. Obviously, they've never had a knee injury, the horrible pain that comes with that. And then the expectation, you come out of high school with that kind of a rating. And then now here's something I'm going to throw at, and this isn't about Nick Smith, but it's about any of these highly rated top 15, top 20 players in the country, high school football, baseball, with NIL. If they're getting a big NIL deal and then they're not producing or they're not even playing, that I think that's going to make fans, it's going to give them more reasons to get upset. But like, if you're saying that about Nick Smith, I don't know him. You do. That's all I need to hear. That's why we like to let the people who know the players, the athletes. I know some on different teams, but when you know them, you have a much better idea. What about A&M keeps you up at night if you are Eric Musselman and the Arkansas team that you are going to struggle with? You won the first time.
It was a struggle,
Yeah.
And they, again, I talk about their defense. They play great defense. Buzz has them playing to the perfect roles. They will compete their butt off, and that's the big thing that I think he's got going down there. 10-2 in conference play. We have one on the road, have one at home. I do think that their schedule gets a little tougher as they go down the stretch here. We'll see how that plays itself out. Last year, that was a thing that ended up keeping them from going as far as they went to. They got off to a good start and kind of skidded home. But I do think they have a lot of tough kids that just play really good, hard-nosed basketball. It is that team is what you'd like to see, the grit from an Arkansas team, but they're just different. One's made up of tough, hard-nosed kids. The other one's made up of great athletic young men who, if you could mix some of last year's team and some of this year's team, I think you'd have something there.
Well, when you're relying on there are 3 freshmen, at least 3 guys that really hadn't played any, versus last year you had really 1. It's different. It just takes more time. I think that's what it is. Eric Musselman is a great recruiter, but more than anything, that staff, they are good at developing players throughout the season. What's more frustrating than having talented players who just never get any better than their senior year of high school? What can you think of? I mean, that's what draws the ire of fans.
Yeah, I agree, but I just don't think that's the case here. I think that Anthony Black has played himself into a for sure lottery role. Jordan Walsh is a young man who I think people, because he was a McDonald's All-American, expected him to come in, average 20 points a game. That's never been his game. If you went and watched him in high school, as I did,
yeah,
I knew what type of player they were getting. He has been a little inconsistent. Certainly, and you'd have to say that's the truth. But I do think that it is important. Fans are an integral part to every program, and fan is short for fanatic, and you love the passion and all. But sometimes, just because they're a McDonald's All-American doesn't mean they're a prime, ready to go NBA type player. There's a lot to learn going from high school, and really, in a lot of ways, you have to acquiesce your game into what's best for the team, and I think that takes a while. Now, it should be done by now.
Well, just like you said, I just think Arkansas staff is one of the better ones at developing these kids. I mean, when you bring in a recruiting class like you did last year, one of the top 3 in the country, to be able to manage all those guys, that takes a skill. And he learned that from his dad and an NBA background like that. And it pays off huge dividends. Looking at the SEC top to bottom, there's 5 stars on some of the teams. Nobody has more than Kentucky. And they've got probably more big NIL deals than anybody. And they're 17-8, 7-5, 7-6 in the league. It's hard. I mean, just because you have talent doesn't mean you're going to win. You better be able to manage all those guys. Looking though, and you look at, say, Johan Traore, 5-star at Auburn this year. Last year, Jabari Smith was a 5-star. There's no comparing the two. They're not all the same. Arkansas recruiting for next year. I mean, it's just rolling. Give us an update on the basketball squad that they've got coming in and who they may be able to pull out. And, of course, there's always the portal.
Yeah, certainly they have 2 5-stars coming in, and Layden Blocker, a young man who's from Arkansas that is playing at Sunrise Christian, a point guard that will step right in for Anthony Black, I'm sure, in that spot. And I think he'll be a really good player, obviously, here. Bay Fall is a 6'11", kind of swing 5-star game. Both of those guys are playing, in all-star games as the postseason goes along. But obviously, 2 good guys. You said I'm sure there'll be some portal. Probably the biggest key to me for Arkansas's team next year is what happens with Jordan Walsh and what happens with Trevon Brazile. Now, I assume Nick Smith and Anthony Black won't be here next year because they'll be drafted in the lottery, and Ricky Cancel will be drafted, as well.
Yeah.
But what I think is probably one of the big keys is whether Trayvon Brazile, who injured his knee, when he was playing so well for Arkansas, it was such a matchup problem. Will he be drafted? Right now, all those projections seem to think that he wouldn't be, whereas he would have been at the end of the first round if he hadn't gotten, hurt. If he comes back, then you're starting with a 6'10" versatile forward, really to build around and add, in all the other guys. I think that's probably the biggest component right now. Will he be back? And if not, then you've got to go out and find somebody like him in the portal. And as we know, since Coach Musselman's nickname is the Importer, I'm sure he will.
Yeah. Well, everybody's in the same boat. I mean, it's the world we live in. But the Arkansas basketball, it is an in-state, the quality of play for a state with less than 3 million people. They play really good high school basketball, not just in Little Rock, but in the small towns. And you're seeing it firsthand. Let's talk about it.
Great coaches out there. I know that, I've spoken about it before, but I went to see Farmington a couple of weeks ago. I think their boys are 29-0, their girls 28-1 now, something like that. Just a lot of great coaches, a lot of great players. And a lot of those players have come to Arkansas and played for Musselman and will continue to do that. So it helps when you've got great talent in your state. And obviously he's gone out of state and got a lot of complimentary pieces as well. I do find it interesting that after they beat Kentucky, Musselman again was the greatest coach in the world. Lead 8 again. Then they lose to
Mississippi State.
And he doesn't know what he's doing.
Yeah.
Why would he play?
Hold those thoughts, because you're right. By the time we come back from the break, he may be running for president. All right, we'll be right back. More with Dudley Dawson, hogville.net on Sidelines.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
With Dudley Dawson, hogville.net, talking about the Razorbacks, and going to be joining here in just a few minutes. Pat Dye Jr. is going to join us from over in Atlanta. And Dudley, hang on with us if you can. It's going to be a really good discussion with Pat. He's been doing it for 34 years as a sports agent. I think the number is well over 500 players. And you get your jersey framed on the wall in the office when you make All Pro. And I was in his office a couple of years ago. There ain't much space on that wall. There's not much left. But Dudley, another quick question before we bring Pat on in here, because I know he's, like we all are, moving and going early every day. I got to ask you, Sam Pittman, in the recruiting class, the portal and everything. Let's talk about Travis Williams. Let's talk about Marcus Woodson and the other new coaches. I know them from their time at Auburn, but everywhere they go, they're successful. They're high energy. And getting a little ahead of myself, there's a great book called, In the Arena, and then After the Arena, that Pat Dye wrote about. He never allowed his quarterbacks to have a negative thought in their head. He always liked to watch practice from the huddle on offense. I'm seeing Sam Pittman. I mean, we're all the same age. I'm seeing a lot of characteristics in him of an old school coach who also gets the new deal of what's going on. And he's just, every time he makes a change on that staff, I hate to say it, but it's an upgrade.
Yeah, I believe so. And we've seen that after each year, as I've said on this show before, and will tell anybody, he is one of the nicest guys in the world until he wants something different done. And then he'll take care of it. And he'll say, thank you for your service here, but we're moving on. And yes, there have been several coaches who've moved on to different spots, and there have been others who have been encouraged to move on to different spots. I've had the opportunity to meet the two young men that you're talking about now, and been very impressed with both of them. They've certainly won their press conferences. They're saying all the right stuff. Aggressive, go get the quarterback. You know, multi types of defenses. You know, all the right things. They feel really good about Morgan Turner, the tight end coach that they brought in. They feel like they have a really good staff, not only to develop and coach the young men, but also to go out and get the guys that they need to get. And let's be honest, you can be a great coach, but if you don't have the players, then you're going to be an average coach. And, you know, that's the key. And I've spoken, you know, so many times about 1 to 85 for Arkansas is not where it needs to be. 1 to 22 is there. 1 to 44 is getting there, but they've got to continue at it, class on top of class. And really, one of the interesting things, you know, is spring football gets ready to get teed up here on March the 9th. To me, is they've still got 10 scholarships they can use under the cap. I mean, he'll probably give some of those to walk-ons if they don't fill them all. But it is more about having depth during the season and during practice. He's spoken of in terms of those last 10. As we've seen with Michael Woods and other people, some people go through spring practice and decide that's not where they want to be. You know, he ended up at Oklahoma after going through spring practice at Arkansas, which is always a decision. I don't know. Well, I think I know what happened there, but you know, I won't put that out there just yet. But it's going to be interesting to see what happens between now and the time that you have your first official practice for the fall in the summer. You know, what is going to go on and who all is going to be here, what kind of depth you have in each position and all that. Yeah.
Well, you know, bottom line, it never stops, the development part of it. So, Dudley, hang on with us. Dudley Dawson, hogville.net, covers the Razorbacks, and you need to follow him. Social media, the website, 36 years. Let's head down to Atlanta. And, Dudley, I think you watched the Super Bowl Sunday. I did. Pat, you had several of your players. I know Landon Dickerson, Kadarius Toney out of Mobile. You're a busy man. Were you at the Super Bowl Sunday?
Rob, I can barely hear you, brother.
Okay. What he's having trouble hearing this. What about now? Is this any better?
Not really.
Okay.
I can hear you well enough to answer your questions, but it's
okay.
hard.
Okay. Yeah. Were you able to go to the Super Bowl this past Sunday? Because I know you had several.
I was out there Thursday through Sunday, but I've been to 25 Super Bowls probably, and with tickets running $5,000 to $7,000 a piece, I didn't feel like it was fair to ask one of our 6 clients who were in the game, you know, for a ticket. Nor did I want to pay that for a ticket, but obviously watched it very closely on television.
Wow. Pat, try turning up the volume on your end. That might be what it is. That should help, because I hear you loud and clear. So that could be it. 25 Super Bowls, Dudley. I'm still waiting on one, but what when you get out there, Pat, that atmosphere, you know, in Glendale, it's a 2-week deal. We had Wesley Britt on the show with us last Thursday, and he talked about when he played for the Patriots in 2007, they were 18-0, and that 2-week media spectacle. He said we were even getting interviewed by Jay Leno. Do you talk to your guys? You had 6 of your clients in the Super Bowl. That's a lot. And I'm sure they've got a lot of family members and a lot of people wanting tickets. But what's it like for them when you're around them in that 2-week buildup?
Well, I mean, for some of them, I mean, like one of my Chiefs clients has been in it twice already. For others, it's their first time. And then there are others like Landon Dickerson, you know, although he didn't play in the national championship game because he tore his ACL, he was around those type events and games and all the national hype and all that stuff. But I don't think, and I've been to a lot of national championship games, I don't think that anything is as much of a national/international event, you know, as the Super Bowl. And it does bring a media contingent from all over the world. It brings viewers from all over the world. And it's certainly the single most visible game in our country.
Yeah.
I know the finals of the World Cup, that game is probably more viewed worldwide in terms of, you know, a global viewership, but it's I mean, there's a reason I think there were 120 million people watching the game on Sunday. And I think I read yesterday that it was the third most watched television event in U.S. history.
Wow. Dudley, kind of like your typical SEC football game. It's a lot bigger.
I've been to one Super Bowl. Kept waiting for the Dallas Cowboys to get in it, you know, for 30 years or so, and they just didn't do it for me. So I took my wife, who was a teacher in Atlanta for a while and became a Falcons fan, took her to that Super Bowl, and she was really happy when they were up 28-3 and everything was going great. And then Tom Brady woke up and led New England to the deal. She was crying after the game, but it wasn't because the Atlanta lost. It was because she decided wearing heels to the Super Bowl would be a good deal. And then we had to walk back to the shuttle bus. That wasn't working well. So, but Tom Brady, at least I got to see one of his wins along the way. So, and we ended his career, by the way.
Yeah. Pat, I mean, you look at all that goes on. Your client, Kadarius Toney, and I remember he was an All-American at Florida, out of Mobile. People logically say, how did Auburn, how did Alabama let him leave the state? LaMichael Pirine, just a few years before that, out of Theodore, made that big 88-yard touchdown run against Auburn in 2019. Your players, what percentage of your players are SEC? Is there one school in particular in the conference that you have more players from than any other?
Well, ironically, being an Auburn graduate and having my dad's name on the field at Auburn, it's ironic that I represent more players from the University of Alabama than any other school in the country, much less the SEC. And it's not a shocker that they do put out a lot of really good players down there, and they're going to do it again this year as well. But yeah, we're predominantly SEC. Having said that, we've gone out and signed guys at Texas A&M up to, you know, the University of North Carolina, Michigan State. We had Kenneth Walker from there, last year. We had, this guy's from Montgomery, so maybe it doesn't really count, but we had Cam Taylor-Britt from Nebraska last year. But again, a Montgomery player, Sam Williams from Montgomery that played at Ole Miss, Jalen Tolbert from Mobile, who played at South Alabama. But it's guys typically that either played in the Southeast or they're from the Southeast, because that's kind of where our brand is biggest for obvious reasons.
Yeah. And you think about Sam Williams. I remember coming back September 23rd, 2018, Love's Travel Plaza, Jasper, Alabama. I'm in line at the subway on a Sunday night, been on a 9-day road trip for work. And I'm standing there and I'm talking to these guys. And one of them is Sam Williams. And he was at a junior college in Mississippi. He went to Carver or Jeff Davis, I think, in Montgomery. And he showed me a picture of him and Gus and all the stuff. And I said, where are you going? I'm committed to Ole Miss. That guy, he's a he's a super talent. Was not easy guy to talk to. That's an example of a guy that he didn't start playing football till late in high school, did he?
Yeah, and I mean, I've been around players. Well, my dad started coaching when I was 3 years old at Alabama with Coach Bryant. So I've been around great players, great college players, and obviously doing this for 35 years, I've been around great NFL players, guys like DeMarcus Ware that we represented, Brian Urlacher. But it doesn't take long when you see Sam Williams in person. I don't know how long ago that was, but you see him today.
4 years ago.
He walks in the room. It's like that guy's an NFL player.
Yeah, he's fast. He's what, about a 4.5 40. And Dudley, you remember Sam Williams at Ole Miss? That's one of the guys that I think he holds the sack record at Ole Miss now. But yeah, what about I think when you watch these guys, you know it when you see it. At least a lot of times, they say if a dog will bite, he'll do it when he's a pup. Who are some of the guys that have surprised you that you've brought on that have just really taken off from as good a college careers as they had to even better in the NFL?
Well, Geno Atkins was a 4th-round pick, and I think the guy will be a first or second ballot Hall of Famer. It's funny, we've had a lot of 4th-round picks that have gone on and done really well. We had a Clint Bowling from Georgia, had a nice long career. A kid named Robert Gathers Jr. from Georgia, 4th-round pick that had a nice long career. KJ Osborne, the wide receiver with the Vikings, was a 5th-round pick. Yeah. Elijah Mitchell, the running back with the 49ers, who was their leading rusher last year. And, they traded for McCaffrey because Elijah was hurt this year. But, I mean, you look at his yards per rush, and I'm not looking at the stats now, but I bet you it's higher than McCaffrey's. And he was a 6th-round pick from the University of Louisiana. And we think we hit on one this year in Skylar Thompson, the quarterback from Kansas State. They ended up starting the last 2 games for the Dolphins, got them into the playoffs, and then, took the Bills to the mat, there to the very end in Buffalo in the first round of the playoffs.
Yeah. That's those are some powerful names. Dudley, jump back in.
One of the things I was going to ask you, Pat, obviously, in college, since I cover college sports, the NIL has become a big thing. Has that played a big role in what y'all do now, or is that really an after fact for y'all?
Initially, it turned our world upside down. When it hit in July of 21, the players didn't know what to do. The schools didn't know what to do. The agents didn't know what to do. And we were trying to figure it out. And we started hearing that some of the bigger, more established firms were approaching guys on the basis of, hey, we'll do this for you, but we'll do it for free. And I think they were looking at it as an opportunity to build rapport with the player, to try to sign him as an ultimate NFL client when they were allowed to do that. So that's kind of the way we started it. And we did it for that particular season. We did it for Kenneth Walker. We did it for Sam Williams. We did it for Jalen Tolbert. We did it for Tyler Goodson, who led the Big Ten, I think, in rushing, his last 3 years at Iowa. So it worked out well for us. But as time went on, I think the schools figured out a couple of things. One, they didn't want agents having that kind of influence on their players. Yeah. And, saying, hey, you don't need to play on Saturday, because truly, if we're talking to them on a daily or weekly basis about their NIL opportunities, you are building rapport, you are developing influence with the players. And then the other piece is, I think that, and we knew this was the reality. I don't know that the players knew it was the reality, and I'm not certain the schools knew it, but they figured it out. Outside of Bryce Young, there are very few guys that can go out and make significant money posting a tweet about Bojangles, or posting a tweet about a car dealership, or posting a tweet about, Coca-Cola's not going to get involved with these young men. I mean, they're going to be, going after the NFL players. So we knew the reality was the college players, again, there are exceptions, are not that marketable. And then the other piece is, I mean, I had a father of a safety at Alabama this past year, who's probably going to be a 5th or 6th round pick, say, hey, can you help with our NIL stuff? And I said, well, do you know what the realities are? And he's like, what do you mean? I said, well, you're standing in line behind Bryce Young and Will Anderson and Jahmyr Gibbs and Brian Branch. You just are. And you've got all those horses trying to feed from the same trough.
Pat, hold that thought real quick. We're going to take a break because I've never heard this put like this, and we want to hear this. Be back with Pat Dye Jr., Dudley Dawson, Rob Browne, right after this quick break. All right, Pat, you were making a great point about the realities of NIL. Let's continue with that.
So, yeah, so in pretty quickly, the schools realized it wasn't going to be the financial windfall for players that maybe the players thought, maybe the schools thought, what have you. And I think probably more importantly, schools looked at NIL as a platform to gain an advantage on their competition, relative to raising money for the collectives and that kind of thing. So I like it this way. It takes a lot of pressure off us as agents to have to go out there and drum up deals for players that frankly in corporate America just are not that marketable. And two, we looked at it as kind of a double-edged sword. I mean, you've got a player and his family, they have expectations and they think, man, he's the greatest thing since sliced bread. And, you go out there and you beat the bushes and you come back to them. It's like, hey, we've got this, $1,000 deal with McDonald's and we've got this $500 deal over here and whatever. And meanwhile, the schools with the collectives are raising millions and millions and millions of dollars, tens of millions of dollars.
Yeah.
I think that the schools quickly realized that not only is this a chance and gives us the ability to kind of take that influence away from agents and keep it kind of under our roof, even though it's technically not supposed to be, but they also looked at it as a platform to be very financially competitive because they have much deeper pockets, say, than your local Burger King franchise to get a guy to come play, because Bryce Young puts a lot of people in the seats and he draws a lot of eyeballs to that program and the cursive A and those kind of things. Whereas I don't know that Bryce Young on a national basis or even a regional basis is going to have that kind of precipitous or measurable hit on Burger King's sales, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does. Pat,
and Rob, look, let's face it. I mean, we're taking what used to be otherwise illegal payments, the $500 handshakes, the brown paper bag left on the front porch, all that stuff. We're basically laundering that by those same people giving the money to the collectives and then the collectives dispersing it how they see fit.
Yeah. And we see it all over. And you said my other job is a private client group wealth management advisor, 32 years in running, and over probably 1,200 meetings on estate planning with families, working with attorneys and CPAs. Not once have we ever had a family say, we have 5 kids, we're worth $100 million. We'd like to give each of them $15 million now. Our 18, our 19, our 20, our 21, and our 22-year-old. We're just going to go ahead and give them each $10 million. Now, Pat, you were an SAE at Auburn. Wesley Duncan down in Fort Lauderdale said to tell you hello. I was the 715 West Magnolia Sigma Nu. Can you imagine if you or me got $15 million when we were 19 or 20 at Auburn? I mean, or Dudley at Arkansas. Wow. I think I'd put it in an age-banded trust or an incentive-based trust. You graduated, I believe, the top of your class from Cumberland Law School there at Samford. You use that law degree every day, don't you?
Yeah. And to your point, if someone had handed me that kind of money at 18, 19, 20 years old, there's no telling, what I would have done with it. And that's why I think it's incumbent upon these schools to introduce financial literacy and financial education, because as I've said, and I speak a lot, and there are many times when there are high school players being recognized or honored at a given, touchdown club banquet or something like that I'm speaking at. And I tell them, as a football player, you play a violent sport, and do not assume, presume, whatever, that this money is going to keep coming for years to come. So I hope you go on and become a 5-star, and hope you go on and become a first-round draft pick, but there are no guarantees of that. So I think it's just as important for those young men coming out of high school, freshman, sophomore years of college, to save their money as it is my NFL clients, their rookie year, their second year, their third year, because, again, they play a violent sport. They're one play away from it all being over. They're a car accident from it all being over. They're in a car accident, they crush an ankle and can't play football again. That stuff's gone. And, so I don't think it's ever too early, or I don't think you're ever too young to start learning, financial literacy. And that's a whole nother dynamic that NIL has impacted and changed. And honestly, I can't even imagine walking into a college locker room now compared to what it was like when my dad was coaching, because you've got guys making $15,000 a month, $20,000 a month, $1.5 million a year, whatever, driving the nicest cars. And I mean, it's changed in a very, very sobering way.
And Rob, one of the interesting things, and Arkansas does a really good job at this, and I'm sure all the other schools do too. When kids come on visit, when recruits come on visit, they kind of go over their program, their NIL program. Here's what you can do. Here's what you can't. And what's been interesting, I know that before it got going, there were a few guys who, okay, I get this $500 to go to this restaurant and all this. And so that's pretty cool. But, you got to hold out some for taxes. And they're like, taxes? What?
Yeah.
And I think that's a big part of it. You talking about the financial aspect of it. Yes, all they see is, hey, okay, I'll just take that money. And they forget about, I think, some things that come along with it. And I think Arkansas, and I'm sure all the other SEC schools and do a great job at letting them know it may appear to be like free money, but there are some, things attached to it.
Yeah, the tax man's going to get his. We all know that as adults. I'll give you a funny line, and God bless the young man that said this to me. He was 3 or 4 years into the league, and probably should have known better, but I thought it really is applicable to the situation you're discussing, Dudley, and that is we got to the close to tax season, and the accountant that had prepared his return said, hey, you owe X dollars in taxes. He said, wait a minute. I owe taxes on money I've already spent. I thought that was funny. But that's exactly the thing. When you haven't paid taxes before and you get this 1099 income that is not taxed, you know, and I'm assuming that's the way the NIL money is dispersed. I know that's the way the vendors disperse at a Burger King or McDonald's or whatever. It's you get a 1099. There's no taxes withheld. You're an independent contractor. Yeah. So come April 15th, they're sitting there and they've made, you know, whatever it is, 50, 100 grand, you know, they owe 20, 25 grand in income taxes on that. Yeah. And it might be gone by then.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's like, over the years, we had this conversation with people. Should we sell this stock position or not? And, you know, Barry Blackburn, my attorney, and CPAs in the room would say, well, don't let the tax tail wag the dog, just do what's right. But that's the thing I was going to ask you next is how much success. We had Bill Courtney on the show a couple of years ago. He produced a documentary film that won all kind of awards called Undefeated. If you hadn't seen it, people, check it out. Bill Courtney coached at Manassas High School in North Memphis in a rough neighborhood. And he came in there, a business owner, had a lumber yard in that neighborhood, spent 7 years there, totally invested in these kids. And one of the guys that was in the movie, Omar, and he talked about this on the show because I would never breach anything that is said in confidence, but he said this on the show about financial literacy, just what you said, Pat. And I want to do a series on financial literacy, and you would definitely be the first one on there. And John Hartwell, Boyd Wade, CPAs, you understand this. He said, Omar, how much you think your grandmother's house is worth? And Omar, he said, $5,000. He goes, holy cow. He took him out to his house in Germantown. Bill has a very nice house out there. He said, how much you think my house is worth? He goes, $10,000. He goes, that's the thing we've got to teach is financial literacy. And I'm just curious, when you get a guy who's 21, 22 years old, he just signs a contract, you can put it in perspective. How much influence do you have in saying, now, why don't you live like you're making, you know, 45 or 50,000, like residents? You may be 5 years as a resident, a year in a fellowship as an orthopedic surgeon. You're not making more than $50,000 a year. Now, when you start into the practice, then it bumps up. But do you have much influence in that area and like trying to live way below your means?
Well, Rob, I've always told these young men and their families they need someone independent of their agents to manage their money and advise them on that. That's too much power in one person's hand. To me, eggs in one basket, if you will. Yeah. But what I do always do is I preach to them, again, at the risk of sounding redundant, you play a violent game. You know, I've been doing what I'm doing for 35 years. You'll be doing good to get 3.5 years. That's the average length of the NFL career. Ooh. And I just tell them, do not stop. Don't wait until that rainy day to start saving. Start saving today for that rainy day when it comes, whether it's 2 years, 5 years, 12 years. I've had guys play 17 years, but that's very, very unusual. And so you're going to make a lot of money. Yes, you're making a lot of money, but you're going to make it for a very short period of time. It's a very short window. And if you don't want to have to change your lifestyle dramatically when your NFL career is over, you better start saving today. And that doesn't mean you got to walk around like a pauper. You can have nice clothes. You can have nice cars. You can have a nice home. I mean, the way the NFL salaries are now, it's almost hard to spend it all. But again, you just don't know how long you're going to be able to do this. I mean, there are a lot of challenges to career longevity. There's injury. There's this old thing called age. There's, off the field things that happen. I mentioned a car wreck. It could be an illness, whatever, that can stop the music, real quick.
Yeah, I think Ben and Brenda Dawson raised me really well, but I had a buddy in college, still know him, love him to death. But his dad would call him and say, you're overdrawn at the bank. And he actually said, there's no way I could be overdrawn at the bank because I still have checks.
Yeah.
He's going to be in our class of financial literacy. He's got to be there.
Yeah.
But I would say this, Rob. I mean, just, I know I'm sitting here sounding like, nervous Nelly, negative Nelly. Our clients on the whole, mm-hmm. and I think it speaks to a little bit of who we are. We're grounded, humble, pretty conservative people. We don't fly high and, all that. So the kind of young man that's choosing us and our firm, I think, comes from a background, is kind of predisposed to doing the right things with their money. And I'm super proud on the whole on how our guys, have done. I mean, I've got dozens and dozens of former NFL clients that have 20, 30, 40, $50 million, put away, have generational wealth. And it's really, if you come into this league in the right spot these contracts now, I have multiple clients that are making $10 million, $15 million, $20 million a year. And just 1 year of that is a life changer, much less several years of that. And now you've got, quarterbacks making 40, 45, 50 million in a given year. And that doesn't even count their off the field income, which, the Aaron Rodgers of the world, the Patrick Mahomes of the world, they actually do make real money, in endorsements and, 7-figure deals and that kind of thing. So the opportunity is unbelievable, but you've got to take advantage of it. And you just can't operate with the mentality that you're going to be doing this forever, because you're not. They can't even fathom being 30 years old when you're talking to them at 21, 22. And at that age too, they're conditioned to be mentally tough and bulletproof, invincible, all those things. They just can't imagine not playing football or losing a step or injuries or, what have you.
Pat, that's the thing. I think Dudley and I, covering the sports, as when I walked into your office with Audrey, October of 20, the walls, the pro, you make all pro, you get your jersey in a frame on the wall. It felt a lot like being in a law office. It is not what you would think about a sports agent with all the flash and everything like that. And that is because of the way you're grounded. And I want to get started on this. And when we come back just for a few more minutes, and I know you got to go, but we're going to take a break. But before the break, there was a cool story. And if you want to say it on the show, it was really neat about, you took your dad up to Nantucket one time and y'all hung out with the man, Bill Belichick. That's what I love, is about relationships and history, traditions, heroes. Talk about that and what that meant to him, to you, and to Coach Belichick.
Yeah, so I built a house up there, and I bought the property in 2002, I think, and built a house, moved there in 2004. And, it was at about the time Coach Belichick got on his role, and Brady was coming along and all that. So he had a house near where I was, and I knew him already just through, even back when he was coaching with the Browns. Wow. And I was familiar with him going back to when he was coaching with Coach Parcells with the Giants. I was the coach's son, so I kind of kept up with that industry, whatever. But long story short, his house was near my house out in, it was called the Sconset area of Nantucket. And I was having Dad up. It was the only time I ever had him up there. And he doesn't love to travel unless he has to. So I had him up there, and I thought, you know what? I think it'd be pretty cool to get Dad and Coach Belichick together. So it was a little bagel shop, kind of mutually convenient to our houses. And
right, Pat, hold that thought, because I want to hear this. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll hear more with Pat Dye Jr., Dudley, Dawson, Rob Browne on Sidelines.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4 City exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Pat, I'm going to continue hearing this story about you and your dad and Coach Belichick up at Nantucket.
Yeah, so with Dad coming up and us being so close together with, my house being so close together with Coach Belichick, I just thought it'd be cool to get them together. And I knew Dad admired what Coach Belichick had done. And I'm going to say this goes back to, I don't know, probably 07, 08, somewhere in there. And I knew Dad really, really admired not only what Coach Belichick had accomplished, but just his style of coaching, the way he was, and coming out of the Parcells tree and all that. I thought it'd be cool to get them together. And Coach was great. He said, yeah, I'd love to meet your dad. He said, I literally, Pat, I have about 30 minutes. I've got something that at that time, his girlfriend wanted him to do. They're now married. I said, no problem, Coach. We'll just have a cup of coffee, whatever. So we go up there and they sit down and start talking. And truly going into the conversation, I thought my dad would be far more excited about meeting Coach Belichick than Coach Belichick would be about meeting my dad, because Dad had retired in 1992. It'd been, whatever that is, 16 years since Dad had coached. And Dad had not won a national championship. Here's Belichick had won, 3 or 4 Super Bowls at the time, whatever it was, including the Giants. So they start talking, and 30 minutes goes by, an hour goes by, hour and a half goes by, 2 hours go by, and they started talking. They're both really, really into the history of football, and they got on this topic of, they talked about just, toughness and Coach Parcells and how it was always best to be tough when you got there and you could always lighten up, but you couldn't come in there and be light and then get tough. That didn't work. They talked about all that, but then they got on this subject of how so many of these coaches from the Northeast, the John Heismans of the world, came down south and influenced, Southern football. And so they got on that topic, and they both were very, very well versed, on that topic. And so I don't know, it's probably 2.5 hours has passed by now. And Coach Belichick's girlfriend comes riding up on a bicycle and was like, Bill, we were supposed to be at so-and-so at 9:30, and we met at 9 o'clock, by the way. And it's now, whatever it was, 11:30, And he's like, hold on. And they both just, I might as well hand them both a drool cup, because they were just sitting there hanging on each other's words. And I really think walking away from there, I think is probably as bigger thrill for Coach Belichick to spend that time with my dad than it was my dad with Coach Belichick. And, Dad obviously been around some great coaches through the years, Bear Bryant and Bo Schembechler and Woody Hayes and guys like that. So, but that was and for me to sit there and watch the two of them go back and forth, as a coach's son and as someone who at that point in time had been in the agent business for 20 or 25 years, it was really, really cool. And every time I saw Coach Belichick around, whether it was up in Nantucket or at the Combine or at the Senior Bowl, whatever, he'd always make a point of asking how my dad was and how much he enjoyed, that conversation. But that's a little bit, not a little bit, that's a lot of who Coach Belichick is. He is a true historian, football historian. He loves the history of football. And studying the men that, had great success and where things originated, the forward pass with, Paul Browne and different things like that. So it was a pretty cool experience, to say the least.
Yeah. And Dudley, thinking about Frank Broyles, how your dad and Coach Broyles were friends. And I don't think it'll ever get as good ever in 100 years or 500 years is Keith Jackson and Frank Broyles doing college football. It's just,
you think about Coach Bryant, my dad, Vince Dooley, Johnny Majors, Frank Broyles, Chuck Fairbanks, Duffy Daugherty, Bo Schembechler, Woody Hayes, it's just dying breed. They're just not, and I get it. That job has changed immeasurably with the advent of social media and just the eyeballs on you and the revenues and all that stuff. But I when Coach Dooley passed this past fall, he was kind enough to come to the premiere of the documentary on my dad's, life and career and all that. And Coach Stallings was there. There's another one, another old school, guy. When Coach Dooley passed, I'm not sure who really is still standing, from that group. So it was a great era, truly a great era in college football. And certainly we're in one now with Coach Saban and Kirby Smart, and, some of the other coaches that are having success. And it's going to be fascinating to see, with a 12-team playoff. I think it's only going to embolden the SEC brand. I think you're going to have 5-6 teams in those final 12. And I don't think there's any doubt. It's inevitable. We're going to have a Final Four that's all SEC, depending on how they're bracketed.
And the forward pass
it's just different.
The forward pass has come a long way since Coach Broyles said, I don't know too much about that because you throw the football and 3 things can happen and 2 of them aren't good. So that's why he ran the ball so much.
Yeah, for sure.
I love it. Pat, I know you've got to get on and Dudley, both of y'all, but Pat, I'm with you on this financial literacy. And I've actually put together, I want to do 10 of these financial literacy podcasts. And I definitely want you to do one with us because you remind me so much of my late friend, Barry Blackburn, who went to Auburn with me, had an LLM in estate planning. You are so similar to him in your humbleness, your calm demeanor, and also you're a truth broker. Telling these people that, trees don't grow to the sky is what I tell clients about their stocks. And the way you handle it, how do people, if we have a lot of listeners, this show is growing because we have great guests. It's not about one person. It's about the entire group. How do people reach out and follow you? Let them know how they can do that and look forward to having you on again soon. And again, thank you so much for taking time to join us. And then Dudley, stay with us and then I'll let you tell people how they can follow you. But this has been great, Pat.
Yeah. So our website is sportstrust.com. Our Instagram and Twitter feed is at space Sports Trust. But I think if you Google Pat Dye Jr., it's going to link you to everything that we have out there. So I was fortunately born with a great name in football and a great brand in football and a great reputation in football. And I've done my best to try not to kind of drop the baton, if you will. So
you've done an incredible
guys,
job.
I do appreciate y'all having me on, and y'all have a great day and a great rest of your show.
All right. Thanks so much. Look forward to having you on again soon. That is Pat Dye Jr., Sports Trust Advisors in Atlanta. And that just so much that we just learned, Dudley. Frank Broyles, we have some very good friends of ours from Lehigh, Arkansas, who knew Coach Broyles very well. And their daughter lived up there when she was at Arkansas, I think in Lou Holtz's guest house. And then Frank Broyles, Big Daddy, died just a few years ago. But his relationship with Keith Jackson, Pat Dye, Vince Dooley, Johnny Majors, the old school coaches. Now we got new ones, but it's about the history, traditions, and heroes. But more than anything, it's about those relationships. And if I'm a guy that's wanting to play in the NFL, that's my agent right there. Coach's son, who he told me when he was about to graduate from law school at Cumberland, he goes, I don't know what I'm going to do, with this law degree when I get out. And we were duck hunting a couple of years ago. He said, one of his friends told him, he said, man, why don't you be a sports agent? And he goes, why? He goes, duh. Kind of kidding around. This isn't, but you just, when you're around those coaches, you got to be around Coach Broyles a lot. I tell you, Houston Nutt, we had him on the show a couple of months ago. I could talk to that guy for a week and it wouldn't be enough. That was unbelievable. I mean, when people talk about old school, new school, you know what? Great people and great relationships. Hard work works. You hear that all your life. You talk about your parents and your upbringing. Mm-hmm. Talk about mine and my upbringing. If there's one thing that you'll talk about forever, it's the people that were tough on you and never quit and taught you to believe in yourself. And that's Pat Dye Jr. Doesn't get any better than this, but Dudley, that was fun, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was great. And I got to be honest with you, it's he did have a great name. Now, my parents named me after a cartoon character named Dudley from Royal Canadian Mallees, and I've done my best to live up to that name.
You have, Dudley.
Yeah,
I love it.
I'm a cartoon character walking around in real life. So, that was a lot of fun, and really, I have a son who's a entertainment agent, and
wow.
I learned a lot of stuff from him. But sports wise, I learned a lot of stuff there from listening to Pat today.
Yeah, I did too. And this is something from Dave Cody, 36 years sports anchor, Channel 7 in Austin, KTBC. Saw Coach Broyles at Darrell Royals Memorial Service years ago on the UT campus in Austin. Bitter rivals became great friends. Isn't that what it's all about?
Yeah, he had a golf tournament up here that for the longest drew a lot of coaches, and they all became friends there, had a good time during that weekend, and then went back to going after each other, in the preseason. So.
That's like my sister and me when we talk about certain things. We end the conversation with, I still love you. Both of them. They're older than me, remember. They'll always look down upon me, But Dudley, tell people how they can follow you. We'll let you go on with your day, but thanks for sticking through. I'm finding that I love it when you hang on, if possible, for these next segments, because you are a true grit journalist. People need to follow you and tell them how.
Well, you just keep on putting those big old checks in the mail, and
all right, deer meat and duck meat.
yeah, something like that. But yeah, Twitter handle is Dead Sports, DED Sports. And a lot of Razorback stuff, but also Cardinal, Cowboys, Celtics, because those are my loves. And then working for hawgville.net, the best message board in Arkansas, covering a lot of things. And we didn't even talk about baseball. Arkansas starts its baseball season up this weekend. We'll talk about that next week. They open with Texas at 7 a.m. Friday night in Globe Life Stadium in Arlington. I'll be there, looking forward to it. And then also Fearless Friday. FearlessFriday.com is the high school site I contribute to, and basketball postseason is heating up.
Yeah, while Doug Dean is working out everything on his end down in Birmingham. Real quick, I love college baseball, and we have Butch Thompson, Auburn's baseball coach, on Saturday mornings with us. Arkansas, that baseball program up there, it's incredible. And the interest in college baseball just continues to grow. So we're gonna get you back on here next week. We're gonna lead off. Batting in the leadoff position is Dead Sports, Dudley, Dawson, hawgville.net. We're going to do a deep dive into college baseball because I absolutely love it. And you will be putting out stuff on social media and all about Razorback baseball, I know, in the next few days, correct?
Daily.
Absolutely. Every day. All right, Dudley, thanks so much. Talk to you next week.
You bet, man. Later.
All right. Okay. Doug Dean, AU Dose down in Birmingham. Man, Doug, we had Pat Dye Jr. on. I know you got, we're in a meeting of great minds that you lead there in Birmingham. and Dudley Dawson, hogville.net, really revealing what he had to talk about as a sports agent, 35 years, over 500 clients in the NFL and NIL, what that's doing. And now, Doug, as a great writer, great orator, we're ready to hear whatever you got to say.
Stop it. I missed the great Pat Dye Jr. And it's really a marvelous, I guess, entrepreneurial story that it didn't hurt him to have the same name as his legendary father, who coached for the Bear, coached at East Carolina, Wyoming, and obviously he'll be remembered for Auburn. But there's no question that Pat Dye Jr. went out and earned it on his own, and very innovative approach to representing great, high-powered celebrity, big money athletes. I'll go back and listen to his segment. I'd be curious to hear if you guys got into discussion about how the shifting tides of college football and how money flows through the books is, if at all, if it's affecting his work. I'm sure it is.
Well,
go ahead.
No. What he did say was about NIL. He said when it first came out, July of 21, the colleges were like, what are we going to do? Coaches, the agents, everybody, what are we going to do? And he said those big NIL deals, we talk about it a lot, are few and far between. And if you are on a team like Alabama, he said one of the players who's going to be a 5th or 6th round, he's a safety. His dad came to him about NIL. Could he help him with it? And he said, are you aware of the realities? He said, do what? He goes, are you aware of the realities? Now, you're at Alabama. You're going to have to get in line behind Bryce Young, Will Anderson, Jahmyr Gibbs. So that you saw where that was going. And he made it make a lot of sense. When you listen to that segment, he does a great job of taking all that complex minutia and putting it in the vernacular.
Yeah, and what I think we'll start to see more of as the coffers for these NIL collectives get filled up to really, they're already at serious money, but generational money for the schools that are interested in serious competitiveness in football and basketball especially. But you might see examples, Rob, in which it's a close call whether a football player coming out and entering the draft, he's uncertain. The evaluations are imperfect, whether he has a chance to be first or high second round. But he would be very meaningful to his team coming back, enter NIL, and the ability for these collectives to at least make it not as painful financially to come back for another year.
Next week. When you, Doug, and you think about all the stuff that's going on in college football, NIL, the portal and everything, how he talked about how coaches, of his dad's era and not that long ago would have reacted to today. I mean, they would have figured it out. But I think that when you've got a team with a lot of talented players, there's only so much NIL money to go around. You understand people will only pay so much to an employee who doesn't produce any revenue for the company before they get rid of them.
Yeah, and so that's the reality we're entering. I think that already existed, but it's become much more visible and transparent because we're able to learn about NIL deals that players get. If it's okay, Rob, I wanted to shift a little to what
absolutely
in front of us last night in a less than capacity Neville Arena in Auburn. I guess we can forgive people for taking their sweetheart out on Valentine's night. But
Doug, let's take a quick break. We're going to come right back. Yeah, we're going to be right back with more Doug Dean, AU Dose after this.
Hey y'all, it's Ainsley from Hewlett & Dunn, just coming to let you know about our new collection of boots. It's going to be our dress boots. They're the Horsepower collection, and they're genuine exotic leathers and really comfortable. Comes in all different sizes and patterns, so come check them out.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Doug Dean, AU Dose Birmingham. Let's keep rolling.
Yeah, basketball is a funny game, Rob. It's such a long season, and I would probably include myself in the segment of Auburn and probably other fans in the Deep South where we mostly play football, or it's a heavy flavor for college football. We bring our football mentality to how we view the roller coaster ride of our team during the season. Of course, the Crimson Tide, because of the talent they've got in coaching, there's not much of a roller coaster if you can throw out that blowout loss to Oklahoma at Oklahoma. So their fans have an easy time. They can be like football fans. You know, we only want to lose one or two in basketball. But it's curious, very interesting, and I don't think it portends how this Bruce Pearl 2023 team will do in March Madness, but it is still an interesting footnote that 2019 March Madness team that made the Final Four, at this point in the season, mid-February, had almost the identical record. They were struggling in SEC play, and last night was against a good Missouri team. Was like Bruce Pearl himself called it a must-win. It's always a little dangerous for a coach in the space between the ears for his players, a little dangerous to put that pressure on them. But he said he believes in being honest with his team, and he said that's a must-win. And they came out and just shut down a high-scoring Missouri team and actually found some shooting themselves. It may bode well in the fact that Zep Jasper, who we know can play defense, knocked some threes down. Leor Berman did the same. And it's no surprise that you're going to usually get really good play inside from Janai Broome. So it will be fun to see if Bruce Pearl does Bruce Pearl things. We go to Vanderbilt this Saturday, which is far from a gimme. That's the same team that beat the Vols on a buzzer beater. But I would just encourage fans of every team, if you're still in it, you got a chance to make March Madness. Sometimes you can, even that North Carolina team that just won it all, mediocre middle of their season, and they got hot when it mattered. And here's hoping that some of these SEC teams that are not named Alabama can do the same.
Yeah, Doug, it's interesting. You look at that game last night. Missouri scored 86 against Tennessee. Bruce Pearl pointed out Auburn scored 43 in Knoxville. And this league, I don't know how good it is. The last year at this point, we were getting proclamations of it's an historically great year in the conference, yet we only had one team, Arkansas, get to the Elite Eight, and Auburn, the SEC champion, went out in the second round, losing by about 19 points to a 4 out of 5 starter guard lineup, Jim Larinaga's Miami team. And I heard a great quote last night, post-game analysis on SEC Network, Pat Bradley, the shooter. I love that guy. He said, great old guards or great good guards, the ones that have been around for a long time. You can't beat experience, can you?
Nope. Well, I mean, Calipari has tried to do that. And, I'm actually kind of sympathetic to any program that's a blue blood recruiting machine historically, like Kentucky Wildcats. That what are you going to do? Tell your coach, no, we think you should pass on these 3 5-star McDonald All-Americans. No, there's not a fan living that's going to say that. And the minute you sign one, it's highly likely that they're going to be one and done. So what do? You got to figure out, I guess, a system that is simple enough that pure talent rises to the top, and you can have enough years where you make a deep run and you don't get beat by, St. Pete in round one or something like that.
Yeah, Doug, looking at, the crowds, Auburn, they're selling out all the games. Last night, that game was over so quickly, but unlike at football games where students leave early a lot of times. Now at Auburn, I know they have a deal. If you leave early, you can lose your block seating. That keeps people in the seats. In basketball, the Auburn students never leave early. Jordan Hill, Georgia, 24/7 Sports, yesterday said Mike White, first-year coach over there, following the example of a place like Auburn in the jungle, they're moving their seats for the students and some of the old season ticket holders, who a lot of whom need to pass the HAWG and mirror test when they're at the games, are mad because they're moving. But Mike White told Georgia, Josh Brooks, the AD, during the interview, I've always loved playing at Georgia. It's a nice, relaxed, comfortable atmosphere. He goes, that's not what we want. So they've kind of stumbled upon it. But hats off to those students at Auburn. They camp out at night, and they never leave until the game is over. I love that.
It's incredible. And if you did you get to watch the game last night, Rob?
The neighbors had the blinds pulled up, and got to see the whole thing.
Then I'm sure you saw more than once a replay of student Craig Noyes, who did what I can't do on a real putting green.
That was great.
4 foot on the hardwood putt to win a car. And to me, the fun of basketball and March Madness, that you only need a few unexpected things to happen for these arenas to lose their mind. And that people who were there told me that that's the loudest of all things. That's the loudest they remember Neville Arena being, even including big game moments lately.
Yeah. Look, Marty, Ryan McGee and Marty Smith. I love that Saturday morning show that Marty and McGee, they make it fun. And I love that. You're right. It's a Tuesday night, the game. They kept saying, how do you keep people watching a 36-point Auburn lead with about 16 minutes to go in the second half? That'll help.
Fan for anyone who with good reason and legitimately has chosen to be critical of this Bruce Pearl team. And most of the time, the criticism I've read or talked to good people about, it takes the shape of Bruce was too loyal to his existing roster. He didn't go out and get bigger guards. However, if you're going to have that discussion, I think you also should be curious, not judgmental, as the saying goes, but curious intellectually, and try to answer how do blue bloods like North Carolina and to a lesser extent Duke, but they're still fighting to get to the bubble. How do they ever have a year in which it's in question whether they will make March Madness?
It's people. I mean, you lose a guy like, a legend, 5 national champions, Mike Krzyzewski. And by the way, Coach K, for the first time since he retired, was at the Duke at Cameron Indoor Arena last night, and they won, 62-61 last second. One of his former assistants, Mike Bray, is the coach at Notre Dame. They said, well, they're going to have to get Coach K to come back to more games. But I do think he's one of my favorite coaches of all time. I wish they would have not had that love fest made for TV thing at the end of his career. But I think it's just, you got to have the right people. Look at North Carolina this year compared to last year. But last year they were struggling, and they got to the Final Four and played for the national championship. But I think it's a combination of people and a process, and two changes can wreck all that if not handled correctly.
Do you agree? And I know we don't as closely follow, at least I don't as closely follow the Tar Heels and Blue Devils, but what we're seeing with their challenge, their struggles this year, is not because they had a couple of down recruiting classes, correct?
No, I don't think so.
So you can, if the NFL and sometimes even the NBA can have massive misses on evaluations of talent. And why should we act surprised that there is roster management and recruiting risk management that happens all the time? And I don't care who your head coach is in basketball, you should expect, I don't know, every 3 or 4 years to have what is, if you're running the program well and you're typically making the March Madness and having your moments to make deeper runs, you should expect a down year somewhere along the way, whether it's injuries or just expecting more from a player like we did Traore and also Westry, and they're just a year away from, who knows, being high impact players.
You're right. And I will say this, Anwar Richardson, orangebloods.com, is going to be on with us here momentarily. And Doug, he's on with us now, but I will say this, you point something out that's a big, to me, it's a big story. And that is Johan Traore comes from LSU when Will Wade was let go as a 5-star, comes to Auburn. What's his level of basketball experience, day in and day out, compared to Jabari Smith, whose father played at LSU, played in the NBA? Repetition is the mother of all skill. Not all 5-stars are the same. And what'd you think about Trey Donaldson last night? Get out of Tallahassee. Holy cow.
That was a dunk that brought the house down. I didn't realize he was that athletic. I knew he was athletic, but that he's set the bar even higher.
Yeah. And Doug, if you can hang on with us right now, I want you to, because your questions are solid gold. And Anwar's from Lakeland, Florida, down there. And I met him at SEC Media Days. He asked a lot of questions, really good questions. Orangebloods.com out in Austin. My friend Dave Cody's listening right now. Was a longtime sports anchor at Channel 7 there in Austin. And, Doug, last week we talked about it, and I want to get Anwar, and then I want you to ask some questions. Texas and OU, it's going to be a year early, July of 24. They're coming into the SEC. Anwar, are you excited? And did you always expect it would be earlier than 2025? Because I can't tell you how fired up we all are for that road trip to Austin, Texas, because I've been several times. I love Austin. I love that whole scene down there. And I love brisket, by the way.
I mean, I could think of worse road trips in the world for you guys to say, like, oh, I got to go to Austin, poor little me, right? That's a, you know what, you don't get on a Friday, you get on a Thursday and really kind of enjoy yourself and enjoy the city, kind of thing. So flying into major airports, so you don't have to hit a puddle jumper to get here or anything like that. We know what that life is like, as sports guys. But, I've always expected that it was going to be 2024. 2024 was already the target date from everyone I spoke to here at Texas, and just a matter of just getting everyone on the same page. I think, it helped that the Big 12 has a newer commissioner with Brett Yormark. Bob Bowlesby would probably be a guy that would not have done everything he could to make this work for everyone, because Bob Bowlesby, the former commissioner, was really upset, if you guys remember, when that thing came out initially. It was really felt like it was a slap in the face. And, I think he would have stood in the way of progress. But the new commissioner comes in, finds a way to do an exit agreement for them. I think it benefits the Big 12, because the Big 12 gets to move on. Like, if you're the Big 12, you don't really need Texas and OU hanging around for the next couple of years. Like, you've got new members coming in. You already got a new deal. You got a new TV deal as it is. So you're set. What do you need Texas and OU for? At that point, because God forbid Texas or OU are hanging around and then they win, Big 12 title. Then all of a sudden it's like, oh, what's going to happen to this league when Texas and OU leaves? So you want them out. You want to embrace your new members. And I think, obviously, from an SEC standpoint, it's good to get Texas and OU in at a time where the college playoff is expanding. So now all of a sudden it gives you some more options for teams that could potentially get in. So I think, it benefits everyone going forward. And I'm glad they was able to get it done. I'm glad they were able to give Fox a little something to make them happy with this whole deal. And I think now for Texas, I think now it's about getting ready for the SEC. Like, I think now the Texas has been able to rise up against SEC opponents. Like we saw it last year versus Bama. It's a close game. You know, Texas is theoretically one tackle away from knocking off at that time was the number one team, you know, in the country. You know, if you guys remember back, you know, what was it, a couple of years ago? I think Texas plays LSU and they play Joe Burrow. You know, and that ends up being a game that they go toe to toe with, which we didn't know at the time would end up being one of the best teams in college football history, right? A year or so before that, Texas plays Georgia in the Sugar Bowl. They beat that as a team that Georgia felt like they should have been able to make it to the playoff. They didn't. Texas beats them. That's this famous Sam Ehlinger "we're back" moment. That, you know, of course, Texas was never back, but they still had that moment. You know, the year before that, Texas beats Mizzou in the Texas Bowl. So Texas has been okay against SEC teams, but rising up for one game versus doing it week in and week out, for me, 2023 is about getting ready and getting your program ready to go do that weekend. And not just one game, but saying, okay, I got Georgia this week. I got Ole Miss the next week. We got Vandy this week. I got Kentucky the following. Oh, now we're at Florida. You know, we got, you know, that gauntlet of doing it week in and week out. I think that's what Texas has to get ready. But I think the Texas fans are super excited. Everyone I've spoken to, everyone in Austin is super excited to be joining the SEC.
Doug Dean.
Great to let Rob let me hang out with you for a minute.
Oh, it's good to meet you.
I would just say, look forward to shaking your hand, and the first beverages are on me. The first visit, the lovely.
The second and third are on me. How about that?
I love it.
The fourth one is the wild card.
I was just going to say, based on your backdrop, you can't hide money, you know, and you must have figured out in your line of work how to funnel some of that Texas oil money. You're
pays the bills, that's for sure.
And I just wanted to make a comment and let you see if you think I need medication or if there's something to it. Sometimes strategic moves, and we've had multiple of them over the years in the Southeastern Conference. At first blush, it looks like it's going to be bad for the conference. We're going to win less. We're going to cannibalize each other and have fewer national championships. And I refer really to the move to have an SEC championship game. And as you know, all that followed that was the Southeastern Conference getting better, having more money, improving facilities, and all they did was go out and win more national championships, which didn't seem to be happening quite at that pace prior to that. The wealth was spread out more. But I would say to you, and you can share this with your Texas comrades, that we cannot wait. I speak for Auburn people anyway.
Yeah.
We can't wait for you to join the Southeastern Conference, and the same for the Oklahoma Sooners. And I would tell Texas, you've got the pedigree. You fit the blue blood criteria.
Doug, hold that thought, because they're the third winningest program in the history of college football. Yeah. Oklahoma's the number 5. It's about to get really fun. Right back.
Yeah, you bet.
Doug Dean, carry on. Away with friend.
Thank you, Rob. I'll cut the filibuster here, Anwar, and get to the question. So I think Texas fans, what they're looking for, I'm sure, and they've had some great seasons in the last 10 or 15 years, but their standard is to win national championships. I get that. And I think what they will experience, it will take a minute or two, but by playing and being in the SEC, you will see and feel, your players will, and even coaches, what has to happen in the trenches, for example, what has to happen with speed and just making clutch plays. And I think it makes it more likely that Texas lifts the national championship trophy than if you stayed out of the SEC. Do you understand my question, and what are your thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, I think you have some interesting thoughts there. And, so the one thing I think that benefits Texas when they go into this conference is they're no longer the top dog. Like Alabama's the top dog, Georgia's the top dog, right? And so, Texas is probably not going to be favored in, a portion of the games that they play in every single year. So what I think that helps Texas is to raise up its level, because everyone always gets up for Texas. Texas is going to have to learn how to get up for other opponents week in and week out. I think it's going to help Texas also from a recruiting standpoint, because if you look at it, I don't know, there's like a little echo or something like that.
Yeah.
Okay, hold on, let me just turn myself down. Okay. Yeah. Now I feel good. From a recruiting standpoint, Texas is, if you saw, not the 2023 class, great on offensive line recruiting. Great offensive line recruiting. They end up getting a 5-star in Kelvin Banks, another 5-star DJ Campbell, but they end up getting a guy who ends up being a starting left tackle for them as a freshman this year. And then they've got a lot of good guys. It was one of the best hauls that Texas has ever had in their history. And a lot of that was based off of, Texas has struggled because kids that they know, hey, if I'm on the offensive or defensive side of the ball, especially on the line, I go to the SEC because that's where it's at. That's where I'm going to potentially make it to the NFL. The Texas where they've struggled and where being in the SEC may help them a lot is on the defensive line recruiting perspective. Texas hasn't, and I want to make sure I got this right, Texas hasn't signed a 5-star defensive lineman since Malcolm Browne in 2012. And the reason is because every defensive lineman who's especially elite says to themselves, I want to go to the SEC, because if I'm going to go to the Big 12, it's like a wasteland for defensive linemen. So I think this will help Texas to get, they're good at the skill position. Not a problem of getting at the skill position. You've seen what Sarkis has been able to do with Quinn Ewers, get an Arch Manning. So you've been able to recruit a quarterback, but you guys know better than anyone else, SEC is about winning in the trenches. And you've got to be able to have those guys that when Georgia's getting 3 defensive linemen that are first-round draft picks, right, that we saw last year, or I guess early this year, last year, you've got to be able to have the guys that compete. So I think, to your point, Dean, I think it will raise up the level of play for Texas. I think it will help them from the recruiting standpoint for the level of Texas. It'll be interesting to see how it does for A&M, because for A&M, one of the things that they've been able to pitch is, hey, look, this is the SEC. Well, Texas will be able to do the same exact thing to the same exact kids. It'll be interesting to see those kids who they're going head-to-head with now have more. They got more than one option in the state of Texas. It'll be interesting to see where those kids go as well.
Anwar, real quick, is there mostly excitement among the fan base to restore the longtime rivalry with the Aggies?
Now there is. There had been that Hatfields and McCoys kind of, thing where, okay, well, A&M left, so you know what, screw you guys. And A&M's like, I know, well, screw you guys. Like, we're never going to play each other. But now that they know it's back, it's the rivalry. Texas fans are very excited about it. Texas fans, view Aggie fans as weird folks, and maybe other people in the SEC do as well. I don't have a dog in the fight.
Never. Explain those yells.
Yeah. We all get to do the yells and things to that effect. They're excited about it, and it's a rivalry. Look, you guys know this. There's very few rivals that don't play each other. And it's a rivalry that college football overall needs. Auburn plays Alabama. Could you imagine just not playing that game? Florida plays Florida State, and they're not in the same conference, but that happens. Like, you've got to have that rivalry. So now going back to having a Thanksgiving Day, Thanksgiving night game between those two that could, at the end of the day, determine, who gets into the playoff, right? Because there's a 3-team team might make it into the playoffs. That could be the thing that, pushes one of those teams in over the edge. So yeah, Texas fans are extremely happy about, and extremely happy, for some of these road games that they're going to be going on and going to different places and different things to see. That Texas doesn't get excited about going to Manhattan, Kansas, to go play against Kansas State. They don't get excited about Lubbock. They don't get
Hey, Rob,
to go to Athens and some of these other places. They get excited.
Yeah.
Rob, real quick, hide your girlfriends and wives. McConaughey is coming to town.
All right.
Be careful. There's a lot of women coming to that like Matthew. No matter what people say about Texas, no one says anything bad about Matthew. That's for sure.
Yeah. Well, one thing along the lines of what Doug just said, I've got a theory. I think it's like a divorce when the husband and wife, they have 4 kids in the house. It's going to happen. And they stay together, and all the kids see is them pushing each other away. That's kind of what Texas and OU are. They love it. They've got relationships out there. They'll never take that away. But at the same time, the blessing, a mixed blessing maybe, but I think it's good for the Big 12 is they know where they're going. And from the bottom up, Lance Leipold comes to Kansas. And I went to the Liberty Bowl, about 57,000, damn near sold out at the Liberty Bowl against Arkansas and Kansas. Man, they travel well, but it's been 15 years since the bowl game. But you look at Baylor, and then you had TCU, a team that was 5-7 the year before, played for the national championship. Now they lost by a lot, but they were in that national championship game.
Mm-hmm.
I think, and we have Bo Carter from the Southwest Conference, the Big 12 office, now with the National Football Foundation, and Ken Capps on the show a lot. And Billy Shershot was on with us recently, remembering Mike Leach, his good friend. I think Doug's dead on right. The kids now in Texas, if you do the hat test, when you're recruiting a kid, let's say from Austin, and you're recruiting him to Auburn or Tuscaloosa, how many hats does he fly over? College Station, Baton Rouge, Starkville, Oxford, whatever, to get to where you are. I think now you just nailed it too. God, are you a trial lawyer, Anwar? Because you brought up such a great point about the defensive lineman, and it goes back to what Tommy Tuberville was asked after 3 years at Texas Tech. What's the biggest difference in the players in the Big 12 versus the SEC? He said, well, out here, if you have a couple of really good edge rushers, that's great. But on the interior, you don't have Senderick Marks and, DeMarcus McNeil. You don't have Marcus Wares. You don't have Quinnen Williams. You don't have those kind of guys that you did Derek Browne on the interior. So Doug and Anwar, y'all just laid a case for, I think Texas, I'm going to say this, I think they've been bored, and you're about to see this Longhorn program get back, because I can remember going to a lot of Texas games over the years. They were scary to play them, and their fans do not leave until they sang, the eyes of Texas or upon you. They've got incredible fans and more stuff from Dave Cody. Here it is, Skolt's Beer Garden, Bevo Boulevard, Black's Barbecue, Franklin's Barbecue. I'm getting really hungry talking to you, but I think it's the best thing to happen to Texas and OU. The sooner they get in the SEC, the better.
Yeah, I would, agree with you as far as that. I think, again, so they got to get through 2023. And I think if you're Texas, it still becomes, there's a little bit of unfinished business, I think, as it relates to Texas and the Big 12. And I think, in order to enter in the SEC, they've got to be able to have some sort of momentum, and they've got to be able to establish that this season, because look, if you struggle against the Kansases of the world and the K-States of the world and the TCUs and all that other kind of stuff, you're going to probably have bigger problems. I think Texas got a good team right now with a lot of talent, a lot of talent. And this is also Steve Sarkisian's third season. So, there's a lot on the line, I think. Doesn't mean hot seats or anything to that effect, but, it does mean that, hey, you've got Quinn Ewers, your starting quarterback, going into year 2. You've got a guy, as you talked about, AD from Georgia, the receiver that's transferred in. You still got Xavier Worthy. You've got a good offensive line that's come back. Jatavian Sanders is a tight end that you definitely a name that you should start to learn. If you haven't, it'll help you, especially if you do any kind of college football fantasy betting. He'll help you win a lot. And then, you got, a defense that, we'll see what happens, but it has a lot of key returning parts. So, if you're Texas, you got to be telling yourself, you get to the Big 12 championship game, have that momentum, get that 9-10 win season, get that momentum, then going into, Texas, going into the SEC, and then knowing that, they're also going to have some, tough they've got, Michigan, as a non-conference game as well, and so, their non-conference schedule is not nice. In fact, I'll pull it up for you. And this is one of the things that has been my thing that Texas is going to have to really take care of going forward. All right. So, Texas has got Michigan on the road next year in 2024. 2025, they've got Ohio State on the road. This is just non-conference games. Okay. 2026, they've got Ohio State at home. 2027, then they've got Michigan at home. That's their non-conference over the next couple of years. They've got, I've said this, but I've been down here. The SEC schedule is tough enough. There's no need to add in any other real killers on your schedule. Now, what the problem that Texas had is that when Texas A&M left, they didn't have really a marquee home at home to sell to the fan base. So they started going out and trying to find games that they can sell to the fan base. So they started going out and finding tougher teams. So they scheduled the Notre Dames of the world. They put Georgia on the schedule. Florida was on the schedule. They added Alabama on the schedule. They put Michigan on the schedule. It was to have something enticing for your home team. And then, of course, Texas fans, they travel. So you're also giving them, they travel well. They travel. They're like Steeler fans, okay? Like they will travel. And so they want to give them that. But now that you're in the SEC, it's kind of like you got to revisit this because to give yourself a chance, you can't put Michigan in week 2, Ohio State in week 2. Like you've got to give yourself a chance. So that's going to be one of the things that once they get past this gauntlet, they've got to figure out a way to get some sort of runway going up. So one range 2023, and then finding what 2024 is going to be difficult, but then finding a way after that.
Doug Dean.
Anwar, maybe the Longhorn Brain Trust will want to review the contract language and see if there's a way out of that Michigan and Ohio State game in 25 and 26. I guess it'll be 8, maybe 9 SEC opponents. I'm joking. I think with a 12-team playoff, I think you can help your strength of schedule and your resume. But it's risk, obviously, when you book teams, powerhouses like those you mentioned.
Yeah. So I mean, like I said, it'll be interesting that going in. I'll be interested. What we don't know right now, Rob and Doug, is like you said to you, Doug, you alluded to it, the schedule, what that really looks like, how that's going to play out since there's no conferences going forward. Like, what does that schedule look like? Texas is anticipating having the Texas OU game, and then of course having Texas A&M at the end. So 2 rivalry games within the year, and then whoever else you got to probably expect. They go regional rivalries. You got to expect probably Arkansas is a team that Texas will play. Probably LSU will be a team that's kind of in there. And then, at least that from a regional rivalry standpoint, Texas A&M, OU, and then how do they fill out those other 4 games will be fascinating to see as well.
Yeah, Rob, I'm going to have to cut out, my friend.
Hey, Doug, great questions. I'll go to trial with you any day. I love that the take on that, what Doug was bringing up about, Texas and OU coming in the league. And I really think people are they remind me a lot of times when the stock market goes down 1,000 points in a day. Rob, what did you do when the market went down 1,000 points? And I said, nothing. I mean, because that's what can I do? I mean, the prices in the paper are there for people who are selling on those days. You get through it. I just think in the case of Texas, if you're discounting what they are capable of doing and what Barry Switzer and Oklahoma and Bob Stoops and Bud Wilkinson, and now, look, was Lincoln Riley most recently. Oklahoma is the only college in America in college football history to have 4 different coaches win 100 or more games at a school. We know what Texas is capable of. And you talk about traveling. I remember just a few years ago when they came to Oxford to play Ole Miss. I have friends that own, condos up on the square. I mean, you could name your price. These people are serious. And real quick before we go, and we got to get you back on more regularly, Anwar. I know a couple of weeks ago you had the ice storm and out there, and I was talking to a friend of mine in Dallas yesterday, and he said, Rob, Anwar Richardson was telling you the truth. He goes, I couldn't walk out to get to the mailbox without falling 6 times. So I want to say real quick, folks, we most often see the face of Christ in the least among us, and go out and give with the expectation of getting nothing in return. Give to give out of the goodness of your heart. We live in the greatest country in the history of the world, and we have great guests like Anwar Richardson. And Anwar, I tell you, I love your energy, and I'm with Doug, man. You got a cool backdrop and a cool but you might be the most tech-savvy guy. You're the first one ever on the StreamYard that was able to get on his laptop, look up information simultaneously at the same time, as they say down in Pecos, Texas, and do all that. So this is great. How do people follow you? And again, thank you so much for taking time out of your day. We really appreciate the great work you do.
All right, I want to do 2 things. If they can follow me on Twitter, listen, we are going to be SEC brothers, SEC kinfolk. Right. So this is coming soon. So if you need a Texas reporter, I'm a demand for you. It's first and last name. Nothing crazy. Anwar Richardson. Follow me like that. ANWAR Richardson. Follow me. In fact, I have one of my friends, SEC Mike, will be on one of my shows this evening, actually on live Texas show. I'm going to have to get you on as well.
Absolutely.
And we're going to go talk as well, SEC. Hey, but by the way, you mentioned OU. I just want to double back to that real quick.
Yeah.
Don't sleep on OU. Brent Venables, they may have finished 6 and 7 this year, but if you look, they finished with the number 6 recruiting class in the country, which they would have been ranked, and I believe like either number 4 or 5 within the SEC. They also were able to get a 5-star quarterback. Everyone talks about Arch Manning, but Oklahoma recruited a 5-star as well. So, the thing is, you don't have to worry about when Texas and OU come. It won't be sisters of the poor. You'll have 2 programs with good coaches that are pretty well established.
Hey, look, it's going to be incredible. I think Texas and OU are getting a boost of energy. You think 5-hour energy works? Wait till you join the SEC. It's going to be the Red River Classic every Saturday. Great stuff. Have a great day, everybody. We are out of here. Anwar, we got to get you back soon. That is Anwar Richardson, orangebloods.com. See you tomorrow, folks.